So with our lovely Miss P, we have our gorgeous Miss Phoebe in. Ready, cuteness? So just like with most of the beauties, I like to warm up with a little bit of Find It's with orientation back to you guys. This can be sort of, again, like almost like those stepping stones, like your ABCs before you start really figuring out, all your alphabet and different letters that, of course, can turn into words and sentences and so forth. So obviously, I know dogs do not read, but it's almost like from our perspective is if we don't know the basics, how could we ever build onto more advanced skills? So with our gorgeous gal, I know mom was mentioning she was struggling with getting her to stop in her place for safety reasons, also like recall practice, and of course other fun things too. So with our gorgeous gal, just like I was warming up with Mr. A, I like to have them practice sometimes going from the environment or a find it back into your bubble. So reorientation to the handler. This is, again, the beginning of the foundation to working gorgeous recalls or just coming to your bubble in general for safety reasons. So some recall rules. So to working on, let's say, recall practice is, I know you said you forgot to bring her long line. No big deal. I always have spares as well. I'm going to start her off of gear first because for some of the littles, no offense to them, they're wonderful. Sometimes the gear can seem a bit much, and I have some that I think would be okay for her size-wise, but I like to warm up first with no equipment so they can get the feel of how to do something without adding one more novel element, like a drag line or a training leash. As I mentioned in the previous video, I am getting over a cold, so you'll have to excuse my sort of raspiness and the fact that I am not eating dog snacks, but I'm actually taking not dog snacks, I'm taking my cough drops from this pocket and then using them throughout the session. So I'm sorry if, again, my voice is a little bit funky. So right here, ready? Phoebe, come. Good job. So again, with our gorgeous gal, I know her snacks are itty bitty, but I'm breaking them up into smaller tidbits. Ready? So again, a little find it. Phoebe, come. Nice. If Miss P didn't respond, a couple good things to think about is work this first in a calm or simple environment, like in the home. And I know we've discussed this in class because she's been to classes with you and to different programs other than just the day school. So, but what I would recommend is practice in an environment where you know it's going to be much less distracting and almost setting her up for success with something she would normally find maybe more challenging. So again, we're going to send her away with another little find it. And then from here, I'm going to go, Phoebe, come. Yes, nice job. You will obviously, you brought a nice trail mix, so did the rest of the beauties. So make sure that you do have those different varieties because then you can start to maybe pair the more delicious snacks with a harder setup or with something you want to really instill as having great value for the puppy. Oh, that's a gorgeous down, ma'am. So again, I'm just going to feed her for this beautiful behavior because again, she's been really good with her downs. I know sits were harder for her, which is normally it's the opposite. So let's say, for example, you're going to be working some recall rules. Things to think about is you never want to make the recall the end of fun. So if, let's say, your beauty is out playing in the yard or she's frolicking or whatever in the home, and then you're calling her because you'd like to go kennel her up or go leash her up or do something where you're changing up the game, is the problem with sort of making it be the end of fun is then it starts to make a pup that's more likely not going to recall. So if, let's say, for example, your puppy's in the yard having a grand old time and they're doing a really good job with recalls, they're going to start picking up that every time they've called me, we are no longer staying outside and we've gone back into the home, which could be a bit more boring. So I would make it where maybe you call her to you a few reps, and then maybe on the 5th rep, you bring her in the home, or maybe on the 7th rep, we go back and leash her up or whatever it might be. But if every time we call, it means we're getting leashed and we're leaving, or we're bringing them back inside, that can start to be the end of the fun or the game for her. The other one is don't pair it with something she finds overwhelming or scary. So let's say, for example, your puppy has an ear infection and then the neighbors are making some noises, which is fine. But let's say your puppy has an ear infection or she's not feeling well and you're pairing the recall with doing eardrops and you're maybe even holding it or you're about to do it. The problem with that is then she won't always know, is this recall going to be paired with something scary like the eardrops or whatever it might be? And if so, she doesn't know, so she's maybe going to start not responding to coming when called. So if your dog was also scared of, let's say, for example, tubby time or any of these grooming situations, We're going to obviously have cooperative care, and there's some information there which is helpful. But I would highly recommend that if grooming is difficult or you're having a challenge with something, check in. But for our gorgeous gal, and now she's actually a little distracted. I'm going to use this for a moment. So Phoebe, come. Nice. Good job, cuteness. So I'm going to feed her for that gorgeous recall. But if, let's say, we're pairing, good shake off, Beam. Let's say we're pairing coming when called with doing tubby, and I lure my pup with a recall and try to lure them with the food into the tub or into the bathroom. Now recall has been the bringer of the scary tub adventure. You may also ruin your food if you start to try to almost trick them with bribing them to do something scary, because now the food will be the bringer of the scary or the spooky thing. So be careful that we don't by accident poison a cue or poison a food item. And therefore, when we're trying to work on training, your babes say, I don't know if this could be a trick or if it's going to be paired with something I don't find appealing or could be a little bit scary. Phoebe, come. Nice. Great job, cuteness. So the third recall rule is to not, for example, get upset if your pup doesn't come to you instantly or at all. So what I mean by that is there might be moments where your puppy doesn't have the greatest recall yet, or they haven't worked on this, or they get scared. And the problem with that is if, let's say, we're getting upset and agitated and we're calling them and then we get mad at them when they finally come to us, your babe is going to think that coming to you at times could be dangerous. So maybe recalls are not the safest idea for them to offer. So punishing a pup for not coming when called fast enough or at all does not actually make them want to come to us any sooner. It actually tends to create more of a distance between us as the relationship is now built on some anxiety or fear of getting reprimanded. So remember, if they're struggling, it's either they don't understand the concept, they haven't worked it enough to really get it or understand how to rock it. Righty, nice job, cuteness. Or it could be the factor that there's too many distractions and now they're overwhelmed. So typically when dogs are failing, it's either their comfort range isn't there, their understanding isn't there, or it hasn't been generalized enough where the skill is well mastered in many different zones or facets of environments. So with our gorgeous gal, let's say, for example, I'm going to go ahead and toss a couple snacks. Let's pretend she's distracted. She didn't respond when I first said her name and told her to come. And of course, she's going to do beautiful. But let's pretend she didn't respond at all. She could be on a long line or none. And this could be a safe bubble to practice in, especially in the beginning. And let's say I called my puppy, nothing happens. So she ignores my recall word. She's in her own little world. If she doesn't respond to the first recall, obviously she's right here next to me. But let's pretend I'm going to set her up with a couple little extra tidbits to go find. So hopefully we can pretend like she's distracted. So I'm going to go ahead and toss some goodies off in the distance. So let's pretend, for pretend's sake, I said her name, told her the C word, nothing happened. I would go walk about half the distance to my pup from when I first called them. And then from here, I would then go, Phoebe, come. And then call them. She's like, oh, there's one last crumb. And don't worry, she's like, lady, I almost missed it. And then I would feed her from where you maybe roughly did want to start the recall, but you helped her by luring her into your space in the beginning. So if you try 2 recalls and nothing happens, it either means they don't get it or they're too flustered, like I mentioned a few moments earlier. Nice job, cuteness. Good check-in. But notice how I'm also feeding for all the glimmers of the things I'd like to have happen again. So I know with Mr. A, we mentioned about each behavior or skill set, like sits to feeling safe to whatever it might be for feelings as opposed to skills. You want to make sure that you're adding some good deposits of, again, payment into those behaviors and skills. That way, if let's say, oh, she says it got stuck in her teethies, but she got it. So let's say you have been doing a lot of great deposits into downs. That means downs, that's a beautiful spin, ma'am. That means down might happen really readily compared to a recall, compared to loose leash walking, compared to stopping in your tracks for safety reasons. So I would highly recommend is to gauge how many moments have we actually practiced the skill, and maybe because we haven't worked it as much, is that why my babe is struggling when we add in novelty, more distractions, or difficulty to the setup? So right here, just feeding for this beautiful down position while there's some funny noises happening on the other side of the building is really beautiful on her end. So with recalls, you can either practice bouncing back from the environment itself. You could be doing this with, let's say, a family member, a spouse, a friend. She could be working a recall to one of them, and then it's your turn after she checks in with them to come to you, almost like a little bit of like a ping pong back and forth, like the ball, and she's going back and forth between the paddles. So the other option again, toss the food, get your babe to get distracted, and then from there you could go again, Phoebe, come. Yes. If she's working this on a drag line or a training leash, which again could be 15 to 30 feet, I normally stick to 20 to 25 tops because I feel like the longer they are, it can be more difficult for us to manage. And sometimes it feels like a lot of sort of weight for her because she's a smaller girl. So if your babe is rather small, I'd recommend, she's like, that went way too far. That was a big boy. It flew away. There we go. So if, let's say, the drag line or the training lead is too thick, you may find that it's a lot of almost weight on her and she may not feel as comfortable practicing in it or responding while wearing it. So if you find that when you're practicing off gear, she's more responsive and on gear not as well, see if you can find either a much lighter gauge or make your own training longer lead. I had a client that had an even smaller teacup Yorkie. And for that pup, even if you got like the smallest line you could find at the store for dogs, the problem there is still so much weight for the pup that she would just stop moving and just give up. So for them, I had them get a very small, teeny rope that they found at a hardware store, and then they took the smallest little buckle and then used that. So you may find for her maybe 15 lengthwise is plenty. Ready, find it. Because if it's much longer, that means even more weight that she might be pulling. And I'm not saying she can't build up to something, but we don't want to make it where it's another element of some sort of struggle for her, where it's already challenging with the distraction sake, it's maybe challenging with the smells and different aromas, but it could also be the challenge of the new gear throws her off while learning. So the other option for our gorgeous gal is we could also work a little sit or down. And of course, I know downs are her favorite. So I'm going to just assume down will be her starting point, which is fine. I'm going to then tell her to wait. And then from here, while she's waiting, I could take a little step away. And our other little guy is digging. He's trying to find some crumbs that may have gotten into the slow feed bowl. So if there's a little bit of a noise distraction or I lose her, I'm going to regain that lovely down. She's like, what? My brain melted. So if I miss out on a moment with her because there was a distraction, don't worry. It happens at home too, I bet. So I'm going to get her attention. Ready, cuteness? That was a great little noise moment where I get her to check in with that positive interrupter. So we might try, ready? Phoebe. Nice. So for the handsome guy who's a little distracted, he's just making some noises, I'm just going to grab a few snacks for him and toss them over the fence. Ready? There we go. Do a little find it for the handsome guy. So obviously with our beauties, they're rotating through their practice when they're out and about. So we might again see if our gorgeous gal can offer nice little downs. I'm going to feed for that. Two, I forgot to ask what your hand signals are. So I'll double check with everybody tonight. Make sure I'm not messing up someone's hand signal compared to another family. So the main goal is keep yours consistent in your household. But if I don't always know them, I'm sorry, and I'll double check with you. So let's say right here, we might tell her to wait. I'm not going to add distance or, for example, movement. I'm just going to hold her back for just a second. I'm going to go, Phoebe, come. And just have her move into my space from that distance. If in the beginning, adding distractions, adding movement, adding space between you and your pup is so hard, start off with your puppy really nearby and work on this. So again, we might tell her to wait, take a little step if we could. If the step was too hard for her, I wouldn't add that yet. And then Phoebe, come. So this way your gorgeous gal can work a little bit with holding back, work that impulse control like I was doing a little bit with Mr. A, but he was so tired. He was kind of wanting to just lay down and take a breather. So let's say again, we're going to work that lovely little down. She's like, hold on, my brain's melting. And they are, of course, getting a little fatigued throughout the day. Ready? So I might go down. Nice. Tell her to wait. Have her hold it for a second or two. And then Phoebe, come. So you can work these lovely recalls from a stationary position like a weight. We will dive into, again, stays versus weight and how they vary. Obviously, you can always check out previous other content from previous pups that have taken the program, because there could be other skills on there that we haven't touched base on yet for these babes, but maybe I've already worked in a previous video with another puppy or dog student. So with these lovely little recalls, again, you could rotate. Maybe she's having a hard time being stationary, so find it might be better with a little recall. So again, we're going to send her with a little find it. She's romping, and then I might go, Phoebe, come. Yes. She's like, hold on, I got distracted. Can you not run and chew? I know it's hard. So if she's a little bit unsure, I'm going to see if I can bring her in right here. Yes, and feed for that. So remember that behavior won't be most pristine ever in the beginning, because this is their first day for some of them. I think 3 out of the 4, it's new for them. Or sorry, 3 out of the 4 total. So with our gorgeous gal, if recalls are not as fluid, start off in a softer bubble. Make sure recalls are not scary or overwhelming and they're not paired with something negative. Make sure that recalls are attainable. So if you're asking over and over and it's pretty much a setup where you know she's not going to do well, don't even bother. Ask for a skill maybe she knows better. So maybe she responds really well to a touch. Maybe she responds really well to a find it. Maybe there's other skills she's worked on that are super easy from her perspective, and maybe you rock that in a situation where, like, oh no, and she's not always as good with the recall yet. You could try maybe, for example, a little touch. Good job. And maybe targeting is easier for her at certain points. But we'll give our little lady a little breather, and then we're going to work again a little bit with another skill in just a moment or two. But that was really nice with her recall practice. So good job, madam.